Hi, and welcome to the Confidence Mastery podcast. This week we have the amazing Mike Capuzzi with us. Have I pronounced that right? Please tell me I have.
you, you did, Natalie.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us, Mike. I'm very excited to have you and have this conversation today. Could you just give our listeners a brief introduction to yourself and what we're going to be talking about today? Because I know that they're going to get so much value today.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking today about the power of publishing what we call short, helpful books. So we'll talk more about what that means. But it's if you've ever wanted to be a book author, write that book, specifically nonfiction, Natalie. This is going to be a great, conversation that you and I are going to have. But just very quickly, I've been doing this a long time. As a matter of fact, I got a birthday coming up here. I can't believe what's coming up, but
30,
I've been in
yeah?
the marketing and have had my own company since 1998, which is crazy. Worked in corporate America before that, in a technical role, then moved into a marketing role. But I've been doing marketing for clients since 1998, published my first book in 2007, published my first client book in 2008. And now all we do, Natalie, is help entrepreneurs, business owners, and corporate leaders, CEOs, those kind of folks, publish these short, helpful books, which are meant to differentiate themselves and their businesses.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm like I say, I'm really excited. As you already know, I've been saying I've been writing a book for 5 years. Um, and I know that a lot of people listening, they want to write a book, but they don't know what about. How do you how do people figure that bit out before we go into the rest?
Well, again, if we can, we'll keep the conversation again in the context of nonfiction, business
Yeah.
oriented, right? So, if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, or a corporate leader, chances are you are helping people with something. You're either teaching them how to do something, you're helping them gain something, you're helping them lose something potentially. So, you're already helping people. And then it's just a matter of saying, hey, how can I encapsulate how I help my customers, clients, patients, students, whatever you have, into a book, right? So a book is nothing more than a written conversation between you, the author, and your ideal reader. So if you're already helping people, it makes it that much easier. And then it comes down to Natalie trying to identify your ideal reader. Not everyone is your reader, no matter what you do. You want to target. That's why these short, helpful books are so nice, because they can be very focused. What do you want that reader? Who do you want that reader to be? What do you want that reader to accomplish by reading your book? And then what do you want that reader to do after they read your book, which is really a key differentiation that we'll talk about. But those are the three big first things. And then coming up with what we call the big idea of your book, your book hook, and all that good stuff. It's just a matter of sort of brainstorming and thinking what makes the most sense. But I'll leave this with you, Natalie. If you always remember this mantra, serve the reader. If you're always going in with this idea of serving the reader, helping the reader accomplish something, whatever it is, coming up with a good book idea shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, I love that. And definitely thinking about what you want them to do after, because it's all well and good writing the book, but if you don't send them to do something.
Yeah, which is that is one of the biggest mistakes, even in this day and age. Now it's gotten a lot better, but I'm still amazed how many nonfiction book authors do not give what we call pathways for the readers to take after they read the book. Because if they want more from you, you need to put that pathway in front of them. And if you don't, shame on you.
Yeah, like make it easy for people. It's like
Yes.
Amazon one-click buy, isn't it? It's easy.
Yeah.
Too easy.
Too easy is right.
Too easy. Tell us about the 100-page book.
So the 100-page book is a book I published in 2020, and it's actually the second book focused on these short books. By the way, we call these short, helpful books. Our brand, our special sauce, we call them Shooks. So a Shook is a short, helpful book. It's our brand of book.
Brilliant.
But the 100-page book was written as a second book after the magic of short books to really be, in all honesty, it was an experiment for me to try to get my first Amazon #1 bestseller. So I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but I had always kind of poo-pooed the idea of, Amazon bestsellers. There's all kinds of ways to game that system, even today. But personally, I got like a PhD level study in what it really means to have a legitimate bestseller, and the 100-page book was the effort that I created for that. And I'm happy to say we were a #1 international bestseller for like 8 months. We sold thousands and thousands of copies, which is not my main priority, but it was very nice and satisfying to see. And it really catapulted a lot of people to write their first 100-page book.
That's amazing. That must make you feel proud.
It's cool. I mean, it's what's really cool, because I have a podcast also. I've had guests on my podcast. I did not know this until they were a guest saying, hey, it was because of your 100-page book or the magic of short books, I wrote my book. I only interview nonfiction book authors. So when you have yours done, I'll have you on my show.
Amazing.
But
thank you.
It's really cool to see that. And it's happened many times. It's crazy.
That's really nice. That's a really nice feeling. Really, really nice. And what makes a shook better than a non-shook?
Gosh. So one step back, if I may. Again, I'm a marketing guy, so this is a little marketing lesson. So you might, some people are like, oh, shook, that's a stupid name. Why do some people like it, some people don't. But as you know, Natalie, most business owners have competition. There's other people that do what you do. There's other people that do what I do. So it's important for you to figure out points of distinction, ways to distinguish yourself. So here in the States, I don't know, where you are, if it's the same, but we have Burger King and we have McDonald's, right? They both sell hamburgers, but one's got the Big Mac, one's got the Whopper. Well, that's why we came up with this concept of a shook, a short, helpful book. So shooks are different in that, and you don't show the video, right?
I may put it on YouTube.
Okay, well, I'm showing on my screen here on the camera. So here's a shook, the magic of short books. And first off, physically, it's a slightly smaller size than a traditional book. So right away, it's a bit of just a point of differentiation. It doesn't look like every other book out there. It's just slightly smaller, a little thinner. Inside, the layout is, again, I'm a marketing guy. The layout is meant to be very readable physically. So if it's physically easy to read, it's more likely to be read. And then what's really important, Natalie, is the way the content flows. So we have a very specific recipe from the very first page to the page 100 or thereabouts, because typically they're about 100, 120 pages for most shooks. A very specific format, a very specific recipe, what chapter goes where, what that chapter should be about, et cetera. So that combination makes our short, helpful books fairly unique.
I like that. And it being a bit smaller means it's easier for you to pick up and carry around as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have him in my car. I carry him. I just went on a trip. I had him in my backpack portfolio thing. So yeah, it's definitely a little more compact for sure.
Yeah. And then when it comes to the marketing, because you said about, once you've written the book, because you said about being an Amazon #1 bestseller. And I think that does hold quite a bit of weight when to normal, without sounding strange, to normal people,
right?
Especially if they don't know that. You can, like, I can't remember the phrase you used. You can gamify it. You can get to #1 in all sorts of categories, can't you?
Yeah.
But when you have done it in the way that you've done it, and you're able to say that, we are #1 Amazon bestseller, I do believe that does carry some weight behind it. So what for you is it that helps to get people there? Does that make sense? Uh-oh.
I don't know if you can hear me now.
All right, you froze. You're back. We're good.
You froze too. That's weird. I've never seen that happen on Zoom.
No. Oh, very strange. Well, we're back in the room. Where did we get to?
So you were asked, the last thing I heard was you were going to ask about the marketing, I believe. So I don't know if you edit these, but you can have a cut point there.
Yeah. To get to a #1 bestseller, Like I was saying, it can hold a lot of weight for you to be able to use that in your marketing. What kind of things help people once they've written the book to get that status?
Yeah, and even with our own client base, only about a third of our clients are even on Amazon. So about two-thirds of our clients are local business owners. They don't need to be on Amazon. They print their books up, they distribute them. But for folks like you and me that have a worldwide audience, help people around the world, then being on Amazon, is a smart place to be.
Mm.
So if you're going to be on Amazon, you want to do it correctly. And in everything now, I mean, the smallest details make, critical or are of critical importance. Your book description, how the page lays out, your book title, the book graphics that are on Amazon. But then when it comes time to try to achieve a number one bestseller, it comes down to things like keyword research. You mentioned categories. Yes, you want to be in legitimate categories. I hate when I see these people say I'm a bestseller. They're writing a business book and they're a bestseller in a childhood coloring book category, which is crazy. So legitimate categories where your ideal readers would be looking. And then really what it comes down to, Natalie, is you need your own email list, your own social media followers. You need your followers, whether it's email, social media, whatever it may be, to buy the book, share the book with their peers. And you got to do that within a concentrated period of time when the book publishes on Amazon. And when you do that, it's sort of a snowball effect. And if all works out well, you can hit that number one spot.
I like that. I think there's so much more to it. I mean, you put things very simply, like you write a short book and you get it out there, but there is a lot more in the machine that people do need to be doing, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, with your permission, at the end, I'm going to
Yeah.
give your listeners a chance to read another shook I wrote called "The Magic of Free Books," and this lists I think it's like 51 ways that you can leverage a free book. So again, I mentioned earlier, selling books is never my goal. Getting my books in front of the right people and giving them away or charging a nominal amount is the goal, because I want, it's my business card, if you will.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a ton of things that any nonfiction book author must do, like the essential things. And then there's a lot of other things they could do and they should do, over time. So yeah, it's publishing a book, Natalie, and using it in your business. It's a long-term game. It's not something like, hey, I'm going to publish a book, have it out next week, and 2 weeks later I'm sort of done with it. A good quality book, and I said 100-page book, now almost 3 years old, still drives leads to our business. The magic of short books, which is even older, again, it's an evergreen lead generation source for our business.
It's like a set and forget kind of thing, isn't it?
It
But
can
not
be,
forget
but
so
you
much,
still need
but
to be doing. Yeah, I mean, I'm even remiss in not doing as much promotion and different things around it. But yeah, a book, you set up a book funnel, can be fairly set and forget.
yeah. So how's your book different to other books that help you write books?
Yeah. And as I mentioned, there's a ton of them, right? Well,
Yeah.
we're the only one that talks about shooks.
Uh-huh.
So that right there's the difference. But again, my background is direct response marketing. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but direct response marketing is a type of marketing that's been around for well over 100 years, and it's got very specific goals. So that's where I built my consulting business before our publishing business. So again, I mentioned our recipe, our formula. It is a direct response formula. Our goals aren't to sell books. Our goals are to attract the ideal reader and get that reader to read the book because it's short and helpful, and then to get that reader to take action with you, become a client, do something that you want that reader to do. And I think that's the biggest difference, is most book publishers aren't preaching that gospel.
Mm. So why do you think that people, entrepreneurs, CEOs, should be writing books?
That's a good question. I mean, listen, even in this day and age, being seen as a published book author of a legitimate book, we're not talking a PDF or some digital download, something that you can autograph, right? You can autograph a PDF or a digital book. Not that they don't have their place, but being a published book author, first of all, you're helping people, right? So that's one goal. Like you as the author, you want to help people, you want to serve that reader. But again, for your own benefit, it's a fact that published book authors are seen as authorities, as experts. So if you have two people doing the same exact thing and one's a published book author and one isn't, odds are that published book author is going to be seen as more of an authority, can charge higher fees, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. It also allows you, Natalie, once you do it correctly, we talked about the marketing, once you have that book, you can market differently than all your competition. So chances are most of your competitors aren't going to take the time, energy, and money to publish a book. So right away, now that you're different, you're differentiated that way. But it also allows you to market differently. So whereas most business owners market, hey, this is what we do, X, Y, Z, you see the headshot photo and, let's say a lawyer, an attorney, here's what we do. You can say, listen, I wrote this book for you, get it for free, go there, and you're marketing the book and the funnel behind the book versus what everyone else is doing, which is, the typical traditional advertising and marketing nonsense. So there's a number of reasons. My podcast is called the Author Factor Podcast, and there really is a special factor. There's a special thing that happens when you become a published book author.
Yeah. Do you think authors are slightly a different kind of breed of person in a good way?
An author?
Yeah.
I don't think so. No, I wouldn't say so. Maybe for like fiction or, depending on what you're writing, the genre, like if it's on something very specific, maybe you're more, a really heavy duty topic or something like that. Our clients are doctors, lawyers, Main Street retailers, lots of coaches and consultants. Mm-hmm. So no, they're everyday folks. And, again, they've always wanted to publish a book. They see the value of having a book working for them 24/7. And, they want to help people. They want to build their business. They want to differentiate themselves. And I think that's what makes them special, if you will.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that that's one of the things that can put people off, is thinking that they don't have the capability. They don't have the confidence to put it together. So, you just saying there, they are just ordinary people means that anybody can attain this and do this, because if you come from a place of service, then it takes the pressure off of yourself as well, doesn't it? You're coming in, you're serving the people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we do hear that from time to time. Like when we do an initial call with a prospect who might want to work with us, we hear some objections. I'm not a great writer. Who am I to write a book? That kind of head trash, which is, yes, it's ridiculous. Again, if you're helping people. And what you just said is exactly what I tell people. I use a sort of a different metaphor. I use a spotlight metaphor. Most people put the spotlight on themselves. Oh my gosh, I'm not a great writer. Who am I to write? What am I going to write about? All this sort of this head trash stuff, right? And I always suggest turn that spotlight off of you, put it on your ideal reader. Think about the people you can help. And if you don't publish that book, if you don't get that book out there, they're going to find it either somewhere else or they're not going to find it at all. So it's your job to get the spotlight off you, put it on them, how you're going to help them. And once you make that mind shift, I do think it becomes easier. Now, listen, we've made it super easy. On average, about an 8 to 12 week process. Sometimes it's longer. It's a hand holding. We hold your hand every step of the way. If you need that help, there's tons of resources. You can read my shooks. There's tons of people that help other people publish a book. You do not have to go it alone. So again, get it out. Maybe it's your first book. It may not be your best book, your first one. Typically they're not, but don't worry about it. Just get it done, get it out there helping people.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing I like to say. It's doing the people a disservice if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Like all of those people that we could be helping, that's me told. So I need to start writing my book today.
You know what you're doing for the rest of the day?
So what gave you the confidence in yourself to start this process and helping people with their short helpful books?
I think it was the fact that I love books. I've always wanted to be a publish that first book. Ironically, not that this was your question, but my first book that I published in 2007, I published it from idea to printed book in about 4 months. And I didn't have all the confidence. I was a pretty established thought leader in my space, but I still didn't, I still had some head trash. So the way I got it done so quick, and my first book, was I created a multi-author book, a compilation anthology book. So I was the initial author, the leading author, and then I found other people to contribute content. So it got it done quicker, and it kind of took that pressure off of me. But since then, I've published 19 books of different lengths and sizes and topics. And, once I got over it and realized it's really not, I say the magic of short books, but it's really not that magical. You just got to do it. As far as helping other people, it's really just, there's so many people like you, like me, that have always wanted to publish that book, and they don't know where to go. They don't know how to start. Really, again, my gift is helping business owners and corporate type folks. So I just found a niche where I could help those people get those books out there. Yeah. And the more we publish books, I think we're up to like 240 or so published books over the last couple of years. The more we've done it and seen how it helps them, and what it can do for them, it just inspires you to do more.
Yeah. What's been one of the best books that you've published for somebody else?
Well, define best.
Best. So, okay, there's two questions here then. The one that's been the most successful for that person, and the most interesting one that you think.
Gosh, so I got to go through a mental database of over 200 books.
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, well, no, it's a good question. So from a purely transactional value, I mean, we have an elder law, which means an attorney who I've worked with for years. Her practice helps people with dementia and Alzheimer's services. She's now up to she's up to I think 5 short helpful books for her law practice. And she just did an event. I wasn't at the event, but I heard afterwards that she's now, over the last couple of years, has attributed $1 million of sales to her law practice from clients who started from one of her books.
Amazing.
So they got her free book, Alzheimer's, dementia. There's different ones in those different books. And eventually they became clients. Now they're high ticket clients for the services she provides, but that's probably like the grand slam. But we have dentists who use their books to, and it's a very cool strategy. Like local dentists, they put their books out. Let me just grab something real quick.
Okay.
For example, and I'm doing this in real time now. This is a client. His book is not yet available, but it will be very shortly. He's a doctor. He's a surgeon, and we tell them to put these little, I'm showing on the screen, these little holders with little postcards that people can take. And he was going to put these in various other offices in his community. We call them strategic partners, to get his free book offer out there in his local community, which is a very cool strategy. We've had a lot of success with local business owners who've published a book to do that. So now this particular client who we're working with right now is kind of cool. He was, I don't know how familiar you are. Are you familiar at all with American football?
A little.
Yeah. So it's, it's not legitimate football, right?
It's not real football, no.
Yeah. I know. Well, in America it is. So Dr. John Frank played for the San Francisco 49ers back in the 80s. I remember watching him as a kid.
Amazing.
He won 2 Super Bowls, which is a big deal. Matter of fact, Joe Montana, who's a world famous American football quarterback, wrote his foreword. So this book is almost done. This shook. I think this, and it's for men who are losing their hair, right? So it's his philosophy and his approach to helping men who are losing their hair.
Amazing.
I think it's so cool because he left the NFL, the National Football League, to become a medical doctor, a surgeon, which is an amazing story. And he was very reluctant. He didn't have the confidence necessarily to share his story of why he left the NFL to become this world-renowned surgeon. And we extracted it out of him. It took him, we worked a lot together.
Amazing.
And it is amazing. And the way he shares the story, and now the confidence that he has, it's like I've lit a fire to him. He's doing all kinds of cool stuff with the confidence that writing this book has given him.
Amazing. That just goes to show, doesn't it, that it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, there's always more.
Yes.
You can learn and do and share. Like that, what an incredible story. Like going from winning 2 Super Bowls to surgeon, that's a great story in itself.
And he wasn't using it, Natalie. He wasn't, like, he was very, just a little bit. And I'll never forget our first, because when I work directly with every client, his name, John Frank, I'm like, John, why aren't you? Oh, he's like, oh, it's not a big deal. That was years ago. I'm like, are you serious? You're an NFL, and he was instrumental in those Super Bowl, at least the second Super Bowl for sure. He was instrumental in that. So yeah, we found a photographer from San Francisco who allowed us to license some photos. So we put all kinds of, just in the back of the book, some photos of him playing. And, again, this book is for guys.
Yeah.
A lot of guys like football. So yeah, that's how it all ties together. And that's how you leverage your experience to differentiate yourself.
To make you, stand out from other people. And that's what's going to make his book different from any other.
Exactly.
About a similar topic, the same topic.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's something I always say, you should share your story and what you've overcome in life and those things, because it makes you relatable to people. People go through career changes, they go through overcoming adversity, they go through not knowing what on earth they want to do. Some people do know exactly what they want to do for being a child all the way. I wasn't one of them.
A small number, right?
Yeah. But like, it makes you a human being. How do you help draw people's stories out?
Again, great question. So I would take a slightly different approach on this. So yes, it is important to share your stories. There's tons of books out there and folks that help people extract their stories. But I always like to sort of caveat that and say, well, you want to share stories and you want to share your background that's relevant, in this case, to your ideal reader. So again, as I mentioned, this is a book. It's not for women. It's a book for men who are losing their hair. So for John to share relevant stories about his NFL career, and there's some guy language in there. He's doing that because he's trying to, build a relationship with the reader that he wants to have as a potential patient client. So I would say, think about your ideal reader, the person you're trying to attract and the person you're trying to create a relationship through your book with, and share relevant stories, have empathy for that person, share stories about, whatever trials and tribulations you've gone through that are relevant, that reader would find interesting.
Yeah, because not every story is relevant, is it?
No, I don't think so. I think in that case, you're sort of just wasting time and words, and someone's reading and saying, well, this is great, but it's not really relevant to me.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you're serving the reader, you're doing everything very strategically. And this thought out process, again, is what I think a lot of people don't really appreciate or do when they're thinking about writing a book, is really there's a lot of thought you want to give before you even write those first words.
Yeah. What's the book writing process like for you? Like, how do you do it? How long does it take you? Do you carve time out during the day? Do you take a week, 2 weeks, go off somewhere nice, going on a nice book writing retreat?
Yeah, I've done it all. I've done all different ways. First of all, I do write. So I have to type. I don't speak it. There's, ways nowadays you can speak your book out and then have it cleaned up. I need to type. I need to write. So that's the one thing that's different about me, but I tend to be a little more old school. I think I keep a digital file on my computer where when I have like I just came up with an idea. Matter of fact, here it is. This is how old school I am now. This is yesterday. This is a piece of paper. You'll never read my chicken scratch on it, but I was getting ready to leave the office yesterday, and I got an idea for a book. Now, I don't know if this book will ever come to fruition, but I said, first of all, I got to write it down because I'm at the age now where I'll forget it. But I would say it's important to keep either a piece of paper or a notebook or a digital file where you write down ideas. So I already wrote down what I think could even be the working title.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start just, ideas come to me, I'll pop them in there. When it comes to writing it, our short, helpful books, Natalie, are somewhere between 10 and 15,000 words total.
Okay.
So to give you some reference point, typical business books are about 75 to 100,000 words. That's like the 200-page, 250-page book. So right off the bat, you can see it's a much shorter, there's a lot less to write, which makes it appealing for most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just tend to, the one strategy I personally try to do is when you want to outline your book. So you want to, here's the different chapters. We give you a very specific, format, but you want to come up with your chapters. And then I'll typically write a chapter per setting. So if I'm going to write for an hour, my goal is just to get that one chapter done.
Sorry, there was a fly. I'm not scared of many things, but I really don't like flies. Sorry. One chapter at a time. Get that finished before you actually do.
That's how I do it. That's how I do it. But and then it's a process of going back, polishing it, checking it, so I'm not of the mindset I'm going to write a book in a weekend. I don't do it that way.
No. I don't think a weekend would be long enough for my brain would switch off.
Yeah, yeah. If you're doing it if you're doing, it's you need a break for sure.
Some people would say, what's the point in a short book? Isn't a longer book, won't that have more value in it? What do you say to that?
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, what percentage of, again, we're talking nonfiction business books, what percentage of nonfiction business books that you buy either online or, Kindle versions or printed versions, do you start and actually complete? What percentage would you say? Do you actually complete the entire book?
Me personally, all of them.
That's good.
But I'm not your average human being.
Yeah. No, you're not.
I listen to a lot of on Audible, so that makes it easier for me. That said, I've got a book downstairs that's about that thick that I've started twice and I've not finished it yet.
Yeah. Listen, traditional length books, 200-300 pages, they have their place, especially on certain topics. I'm saying, and I'm proposing that for most people, at least for the first book, there's no reason why a short book is not the right choice. Most people, there's all kinds of statistics out there, but most people don't finish a nonfiction book that they start. Now, there's a lot of reasons why.
Yeah.
And you're never, some of them, they're not well written, they're boring, they're repetitive, whatever. The promise of saying, listen, hey, Natalie, well, here, look at John's book. Again, it's a real book. It sits on the bookshelf. But say, hey, well, again, you're not the target market because it's for guys, but you can read John's book. You can get on a plane in New York City, and by the time you're in Chicago, you're done that book. That's a nice promise. Hey, I can get it. It's not going to take a lot of my time. So the appeal for the reader is high. And if they want more from you, you're giving them the ways to get more from you. So I think it's I like to say, I would rather see most business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders write 3 100-page books than 1 300-page book. There's a lot of reasons why. Now you've got 3 different marketing opportunities with 3 different messages, for example. And, now you've got 3 books. You're the author of 3 books versus 1. So there's a lot of reasons why I think a short book is a better type of book for most folks.
I'm really liking the idea of it. And like you say about the reader picking it up, knowing they don't have to spend a month and 4 hours a day trying to get through it. There's nothing worse than like, not finishing the book because you don't get the call to action.
Right. Yeah, again, you are different in that most people, unfortunately, their attention spans are getting smaller and they need like, oh, like I can't right away figure out that this is going to help me. You know,
Yeah.
it goes on the shelf. So you've got to figure that out. Like, even though it's a book and even though they may have bought it or picked it up, you've got to make it as easy for them to at least start consuming and doing what you want them to do.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's an absolute waste of time.
Yeah,
And life's too short for that, isn't it?
it is for sure.
And what book's next for you? What are you writing next?
Well, I'm updating the magic of free books with some new strategies. So that's in the works. And I have the little idea from yesterday. You'll like this, Natalie. You'll appreciate this. So I'm gonna, and
Tell
again,
me.
I'm not sure how it fits into my repertoire, my library, but it came to me yesterday. I'll read it out loud to what I wrote down. The working title is 20-Minute Connections: How a Short Form Podcast Can Change Your Business and the World.
Ooh.
So much like a short book, right? 100-page book, I have my own podcast, which has always been about a 30-minute episode. And we recently reformatted the episodes to be 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons why I decided to do that. And I'm like, and I just interviewed, she'd be great on your podcast, by the way. I just interviewed a woman from Australia yesterday. So she was on at 5 a.m., not quite as early as you and I are doing today. But it's funny. She was the guest. I was the host. So it was a little different. But at the end of that 20-minute conversation, I was like, that was a really cool conversation. Like it was just a cool conversation. So much that I shared it with my wife later. As you know, as a podcast host, these connections you make, maybe I'll be able to help you. Maybe I'll be able in some way. You'll read my books or something. I'll be able to help you get that book to the world. And then you'll be helping other people. Like that kind of cool thing, starting with a 20-minute connection via podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a lot that can be said and done in short periods of time.
And in short books.
Yeah. Short books, okay, this podcast has like gone long now. I think there's the long and the short does have their place, but
it does for sure.
I like the idea of just having that piece. So like I do 15-minute calls with people.
Yep.
And they get everything they need in those 15 minutes, and then that's it. They can go and take action. Like you don't need to spend an hour. Like it's like having meetings, like 2-hour meetings, and nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, let me see if I have it here. Can I share a quote?
Yeah.
Now, you got to think about this. So I'll say it twice. And by the way, this is from 1657. So, 500 years ago. And it's from the French author Blaise Pascal. So Blaise Pascal wrote in 1657, "I've made this letter longer than usual only because I've not had the time to make it shorter." So I'll read it one more time. "I've made this letter longer than usual only because I've not had the time to make it shorter." So what's he saying, Natalie? What he's saying is, it's easy to bloviate. It is easy just to spew out and talk for an hour about nonsense and blah, 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 blah. It's much harder to be focused and get your message out in a shorter, more concise manner. It takes thought, it takes process, it takes, deep consideration, in my opinion. So again, while a long format podcast definitely has its place, I think for a lot of folks, a shorter book, a shorter podcast, just to help them make it happen, can be really a smart strategy.
And books and podcasts kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
They do. Yeah, for sure. It's one of the strategies I write about in the Magic of Free Books. So today I'm a guest, right? Podcast guesting is a very powerful strategy for book authors. This woman I had on yesterday, she's been on over 80 podcasts. She just published her book last year. And she's getting the word. That's her primary mechanism for getting the word out about her book. So hosts are booking her or scheduling her because of her book and the topic. She's sharing it on the episode, the interview. and it's a great strategy.
Yeah.
And then as a host, you know, you can have a book, and then you can have a book and then create a podcast from that book, or vice versa. You have a podcast and now you're creating a book that makes sense for your listeners. So yeah, podcasting, either as a guest or a host, is a very smart thing for book authors.
Yeah. What's the difference, other than the money, what's the difference in terms of, tell us the strategy behind a free book versus one people pay for?
Yeah. So again, the likelihood that any author, unless you're a big name author with a big following, the likelihood of making serious money is difficult. It's a challenge. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but it typically is a goal that is not going to be met by most nonfiction book authors for a number of reasons. Mainly the amount of effort and money needed to get the book out there and, at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can still make a couple $100 a month on Amazon or whatever your book, but I think that's a distracting strategy, Natalie. I think the better idea is, how can I get my book out there either at no cost or very little cost, and get it in front of the right readers, the right potential readers. So, putting it out in your local community, putting it out in local bookstores, creating an online book funnel, doing stuff on social media. The free book offer has been around for well over 100 years. I actually show an example in The Magic of Free Books that's from like 1902.
Wow.
I'm a history student, so I love going back and looking at what they've done in the past. So, back in 1902, 1903, a mattress company of all sorts actually published a book, and they published it for decades, 1900s, 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s.
Wow.
It was called The Test of Time, and it was a little book about how they made their mattresses, and they offered it in an ad, get our free book. So this is a proven strategy. You can't go on Facebook these days or LinkedIn without seeing people promoting a book offer. So yeah, it's I'd say, think about getting your book out there and allowing the book to do its job, and then you make your money on the back end with new clients and whatever you're selling on the back end, not on the initial $2 or $3 you might make by selling it.
Selling the book. It's something that has longevity. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much does it tend to cost people to publish a book?
Well, I mean, it could be nothing, zero, if you want to do everything on your own, which
Yeah.
is possible. There's, the one thing that has happened since I published my first book in 2007 is Amazon has made it very easy to get a book out there for sale. So they've made it easy. Now there's a ton of tools where the formatting. So if you have decent design skills, there's tools out there that you can do your own. Just be careful. I mean, a book should look like a book, so be careful. Yeah, that's why you typically work with at least a designer, cover designer, interior designer, and then an editor, copy editor. So it could be zero if you do it all yourself. Our programs range from $6,000 to $9,000. So we're a little, we're at a under $10,000 for, from idea to printed book. There are people that do what I do that charge $100,000, which is crazy, but that's what they do. So it's kind of all over the place, Natalie.
Yeah.
But to do it right, you do want to work with someone who knows what they're doing, not only from a book publishing standpoint, but more of the content creation, the marketing of it. So having someone in your corner helping you, I think for a lot of people is really a smart strategy.
Yeah, having the right support makes a huge difference, because going things alone, you can just you've got no accountability.
Yep.
You can get things wrong. Why make mistakes when you can learn from other people? That's what I always say.
Right. And then it shortens that 5-year time frame to maybe 5 months.
Yeah.
By the way, that's not the worst. I had a guy on my real quick story. He was on my podcast last May, so almost a year ago.
Yeah.
He's from Tasmania.
Wow.
He's a Podmatch guy, so you can find him on Podmatch. And I had him on. He had written his first book. His first book took him 7 years. So he had you beat, but he got it done.
Yeah.
Took him 7 years. So I'm interviewing about it, and then we're talking about, I talk about short, helpful books, yada, yada, yada. Wouldn't you know it? We ended up working together after that. And wouldn't you know, he published his second book. It took him a few months. Now, it's not quite a short, helpful book. It's a little bit longer, but he attributes this idea of like, geez, I didn't need to take 7 years to write my second book. It took him 4 months, maybe. And now
Wow.
that second book is out there working for him. So you can definitely shorten the timeline
Yeah.
when you work with someone who knows what they're doing.
And that, like, it makes a huge, huge difference, making shortening up the time frame, because you're, again, like we said earlier, doing people a disservice by not getting it out there. And again, I'll just give myself a slap on the wrist. At least I have a podcast.
Here you go. You're doing all right.
What's your favorite book? Do you have a favorite book?
No, I definitely don't have a favorite book. I have lots of books I've read and reread. I have a pretty big library over to my right. I mean, I grew up on fiction, so I love fiction. I had a grandmother who, at a very young age for me, she had a huge library. I used to go visit her. She was about 2 hours away. And gosh, I would immerse myself. She got me into the love of reading very young. So I've always been a reader. I love fiction, but as I've gotten older, I just find myself not reading it as much anymore, which bums me out, because when I do take the time, like on a vacation, to read fiction, I'm like, oh, that was cool. There's a lot of authors I like. Dan Kennedy, who's a friend of mine. I've read a lot of his book. I've read most of his books. He's a marketing guy. Seth Godin, The Purple. Have you ever read any Seth Godin?
No, I haven't.
Seth Godin, he writes short books.
Yeah.
Seth Godin is a famous author here in the States. He wrote a book called The Purple Cow, which actually inspired me coming up with the concept of the shook. I won't go into it, but The Purple Cow is about creating something that doesn't, there's tons of black and white cows or black cows. There's no purple cow, but when you see a purple cow, it's different. That book inspired the shook concept. Start With Why by Simon Sinek, a good one. So it really depends on what I'm doing. Like right now, I'm very heavily focused on book marketing. So I've read just about every book out there on book marketing and ways to leverage a book. So it depends on what's hot for me.
I love that what you said about your grandma. I used to read a lot as a child. All of my grandparents, both of my nans, like they read a lot. So I used to read with them. So that's really nice. And I'm the same. Like, I like fiction and like just getting lost in it and turning the pages.
Yeah.
Like, I'm absolutely right. Kindle, like, why? You can't turn a page.
Though it does make it easier when you're on a trip, to have that.
Run out. Yeah, if you finish one and you need another. I actually recently joined the library.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's old school.
Yeah.
The fact that there is a library still, that you joined it.
Well, a friend of mine, she goes to the library. She's just recently written a book. And I thought about it and I thought, well, I used to go to the library. Why don't I still go to the library? Because I don't have to buy them all and keep them all, because I travel a lot. So being able to read and give it back and let somebody else read it, I think it's a great thing to do.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can I turn the table for a moment?
Yes.
I'd love to hear, we talked about it very briefly, but like you said, you had this book idea. Now, if you don't want to talk about it because you don't, I get that. But if you do, like, what idea would you have? Like, what book do you think is the first book you want to bring to the world?
And as we said about earlier, the triangle of life, health, wealth, and happiness, and helping people to find the balance and understand and appreciate that health is wealth, and they're all interlinked. Because the more you look after your own physical and mental health, the easier things flow. And then you're able to do more in your business because your brain functions better and you'll be happier. So I noticed once I color code my diary, and health is in blue, wealth is in green, and then happiness is in yellow. And I was looking at my diary and I was like, where's your happy, Natalie? There was like one yellow thing in the week. I was like, hang on a minute. So like, I'm not practicing what I'm teaching here. So I put some stuff in, put some yellow in. All of us sat and thought, what do I enjoy? Going to the beach, football. And I love the gym, but that still had to stay blue. A few other things, and I put them in. And then within a few weeks, I became happier. I started making more money, and everything just kind of flowed. So that's how I know that it's important to do things that make you happy, because otherwise you're just going through the mill.
Yeah.
And like there's been a lot of things that I could share that's relevant. I used to work 3 jobs, and now I do what I do. Like with the podcast, we do property development, and I do coaching and mentoring. So if I can go from what I was doing to what I'm doing now, anybody can change their life and do what they want to do. So that's the book I want to write, is to help people and then feed them into my Confident Entrepreneurs Club.
Yep. So just real quick, first of all, when you mentioned it to me briefly, I instantly sort of got it. And I love this idea, the simplistic idea, and I don't say that in a negative way, I say it in a very positive way, of like the 3 colors. Like right when you said that, I started visualizing, oh geez, yeah, having that yellow section filled out. I don't typically do that. I just work. And once in a while, I'll have a happy thing I would insert, but gosh, I should be doing more of that. So having that unique, we call it the special sauce system that you've created that works for you, and then using a book to share that, and obviously telling your stories. Now I don't know what target market you'd be going after, but regardless, like that, you have the backbone, you have this, the foundation of probably a great book that can help a lot of people, and giving them these very specific instructions, and exercises to do that are simple, not anything that's complicated these days. People are just going to be like,
not worth it. No,
yeah.
like we said earlier, people's attention spans are dwindling.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I better get my book written and then put some meat on those bones. And if you could leave people with one, well, actually, I've got 2 last questions, if that's okay. And what's the number 1 tip you have for marketing a book?
Number 1 tip is, think of it this way. It's a consistent, persistent effort. It is not a one-shot deal. It's not, I'm going to do it for a couple of weeks and be done. So the most foundational, and this really goes for all of marketing, but specifically for book marketing, consistency and persistency. That is the number 1 thing for sure.
Yeah. We have a saying, consistency equals success. So the more consistent you can be, the better you'll get, etc., etc. And if you can leave people with 1 tip to increase their confidence, what would it be?
Well, maybe I'll leave 2 ideas. One is, you won't increase confidence until you actually do something, in my opinion. So you've got to take that step. You just got to do it. I mean, there is no shortcut. The only way. So I just came back from a family vacation skiing in the Rocky Mountains. My wife's a really good skier. I'm like, I'm average. And I'm pretty successful in what I do. I've done a lot of stuff, and I'm on that out in Breckenridge, Colorado. Like I'm looking down that mountain, going, "Holy moly!" All of a sudden, I became like a little kid. But the only way I was ever going to get better was to go down that mountain, right? So get on this lift and go up and then come down. So I think it sounds obvious, but it's like you just got to do something. And the other thing I would share is work with people like yourself. You typically need to be part of a mastermind group or work with, I really believe this. I've been part of many mastermind groups. You need to be around other successful people to inspire you. If you think you're going to gain confidence working in a vacuum, I just don't think it happens. You need to be around people who have done more and have either, blazed the trail that you want to be on, and that will help you, because they'll help you, they'll guide you. So I would say those 2 things are really 2 practical ways to build confidence.
I would definitely agree with that. We host a mastermind in person once a month as well. And just seeing the way people support each other, their
Yep.
confidence grows because they're helping other people as well
Yep.
as helping themselves. And
Yep.
it's a beautiful cycle of like uplifting. And I haven't even got a word. It's just a beautiful cycle of uplift.
Yep. And it's
Amazing.
simple. It's
It's
simple.
simple.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, that's like you said earlier, don't complicate things. Just
Mm-mm.
simple, nice and easy. And amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. I very much enjoyed our conversation. I hope you have too.
I have now. Thank
Good.
you.
Leaving me hanging there.
Well, can I share a gift with your listeners?
Yes, I was going to say, where can people follow you, find you? We're fans of online stalking, just not in person.
Yeah, ironically, I'm not super big on social media, but if you Google Mike Capuzzi, you'll find me. But I do want to give back to your listeners, if I may.
Yes, you
So I
may. Thank
mentioned
you.
I have 3 shooks that your listeners can read for free. There's no cost, and it's a digital format they read online. So I'm not shipping books around the world here. The Magic of Short Books, the Magic of Free Books, and the Magic of Shooks.
Love
So
it.
if they go to mikecapuzzi.com/magic, I call it my magic kit, mikecapuzzi.com/magic. Just put your name and email. Let me know you heard me on Natalie's podcast, and I will send you 3 links to read those books like in the next couple minutes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to make sure all of that's in the show notes as well. But yeah, thank you very much. I very, very much enjoyed this. I know that the listeners will. And if you have enjoyed this, please do share it with your friends, family, loved ones, colleagues, and even people you don't like, because everybody needs some help. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks, Natalie.